In the vast silence of history, beyond the reach of living memory, there remain languages that once carried the breath of entire civilizations. They were spoken in temples and marketplaces, carved into stone and clay, sung in hymns, whispered in curses, and etched into rituals that shaped the destinies of peoples long vanished. Today, only fragments remain, brittle scrolls, weathered tablets, inscriptions half buried in sand, and fading marks upon forgotten walls. To modern eyes, they appear as lifeless symbols, frozen in time. Yet behind each sign, each curved stroke, there is a voice. A voice that once held power, fear, and secrets that no empire dared to reveal. For centuries, scholars and archaeologists have worked tirelessly to decode these lost tongues. They pieced together grammar, compared alphabets, and reconstructed forgotten vocabularies. But their work was always incomplete, fractured by missing records and broken artifacts. Human minds could only go so far. There were gaps that no one could fill, codes that resisted all translation, and mysteries that remained hidden in plain sight. And so, for generations, many of the world's most haunting ancient inscriptions lay shrouded in silence. But silence does not last forever. With the rise of artificial intelligence, a new force has entered the realm of forgotten words. Unlike human scholars, AI is not bound by fatigue, or bias, or the slow passage of decades spent on a single tablet. It can read, compare, and analyze millions of characters across multiple languages within moments. It can find patterns invisible to us, connect fragments separated by continents, and breathe life into symbols thought to be undecipherable. For the first time in history, the silent voices of the past begin to murmur once more. And what they whisper is horrifying. When artificial intelligence is applied to the scripts of vanished civilizations, the results are not merely academic. They are unsettling, uncanny, and at times, terrifying. Because hidden in those languages are not only records of trade or kingship, but visions of catastrophe, shadows of forbidden rituals, and words that seem to cross the boundary between human and inhuman. Some inscriptions describe events that history never recorded, disasters that should not have been known, or warnings that seem eerily connected to our present age. Imagine a clay tablet written 4,000 years ago, predicting storms that match the patterns of modern climate collapse. Imagine a funerary text carved in hieroglyphs that speaks of beings descending from the night sky, long before the concept of gods was fully formed. Imagine fragments of prayers in languages that no one has spoken for millennia, yet AI reveals their rhythm as almost identical to the chants of secret societies still alive today. These are not simply curiosities of history. They are messages. And the more we uncover, the more we realize that perhaps these languages were not meant to die. Perhaps they were sealed away, buried beneath layers of time, because what they contained was too dangerous, too terrifying for human ears. The unsettling truth is this: artificial intelligence does not only decode, it reveals. It does not ask whether the knowledge should remain hidden. It only uncovers, layer by layer, until the full shadow stands before us. This journey into ancient scripts is not a calm voyage through dusty libraries. It is a descent into darkness, into the secret civilizations tried to erase. Sumerian tablets that whisper of monstrous beings rising from the deep. Egyptian hieroglyphs that describe forbidden rites carried out in silence beneath the pyramids. Mayan glyphs that hint at cosmic cycles ending in fire. Sanskrit hymns that conceal words of power, now vibrating once again through translation. The chilling part is that many of these messages seem incomplete, as if deliberately broken. Yet AI, by piecing them together, gives them a new voice. And in that voice, we find patterns that suggest not coincidence, but intention. An ancient warning that traveled across languages, across cultures, across centuries. As we begin this exploration, let your mind sink into the rhythm of time. Imagine the dim glow of oil lamps on stone walls, the scratching of reed pens on clay, the echo of chanting in cavernous temples. Each sound, each word, encoded into languages now nearly erased. And yet, tonight, they return. They speak again, through the unblinking eye of artificial intelligence. This is the story of horrifying secrets uncovered in ancient languages. Secrets that were never meant to be heard again. Secrets that now, long before Egypt raised its pyramids, before Greece carved its myths into stone, and before Rome stretched its empire across the known world, there was Sumer. Nestled in the fertile valleys between the Tigris and Euphrates, this civilization is often called the very cradle of humanity's story. From Sumer came the first cities, the first laws, the first kings. But above all, from Sumer came the first written words. On clay tablets, pressed with a reed stylus, the Sumerians recorded everything, from trade accounts and crop inventories to hymns sung in temples and epic tales of gods and monsters. These wedge-shaped markings, known as cuneiform, are the foundation upon which written history itself stands. Yet for all their brilliance, the Sumerians also left behind texts that even today unsettle the heart. Tablets filled with visions of destruction, curses cast upon enemies, and prayers whispered not to gods of mercy, but to entities of shadow. For centuries, scholars attempted to understand these writings. Some of the tablets were broken, others incomplete, leaving gaps that could never be filled. But now, with artificial intelligence, fragments long thought meaningless are brought together, their missing pieces reconstructed through hidden patterns. And in this reconstruction, a new, darker picture of Sumer begins to emerge. The AI does not simply translate. It compares across thousands of tablets, detecting rhythms in words, recurring phrases, and symbolic structures that human scholars overlooked. In doing so, it uncovers echoes, whispers hidden in the language itself. These whispers suggest that the Sumerians were not only recording daily life, but encoding messages meant to be read across millennia. Messages about forces that even kings feared to name aloud. Among the most disturbing revelations comes from a series of tablets buried deep beneath the ruins of Ur. They describe a ritual not found in any official record, a midnight invocation carried out by temple priests. The text, partially broken, speaks of the ones from beneath the waters, who would rise when the sky is split with fire. For centuries, this was dismissed as myth. Yet AI analysis linked the phrase, sky split with fire, to identical wording found in Akkadian texts written centuries later. It was not coincidence. It was continuity, a shared warning, carried forward in coded language. Even more unsettling is the discovery of predictive fragments. One tablet, known as the Lament of Eridu, was long believed to describe a flood myth. The lines read of waters rising, cities drowned, and people scattered. But when AI reconstructed the broken sections, it revealed words eerily reminiscent of environmental collapse. The heat burned the fields. The storms did not end. The rivers rose beyond their course. The people fled into the high places. The chilling part is that this does not sound like an event of the past, but of a future the Sumerians somehow foresaw. There are also personal records, curses carved into tablets left in graves. Some of these were meant to bind the dead, to silence restless spirits. One inscription, once thought to be a simple protective charm, has now been reinterpreted through AI analysis as something far darker. It warns of a presence that feeds on silence and walks in the shadow of memory. The entity is unnamed, but its description recurs in other texts across multiple centuries. Each time, the scribes used different words, yet AI found the pattern unmistakable. The Sumerians feared something beyond gods and demons, something that lingered at the edge of human experience. Perhaps the most haunting discovery comes from a set of tablets describing the descent of Inanna, the goddess of love and war, into the underworld. On the surface, this myth was always symbolic, a tale of death and rebirth. But when AI analyzed multiple versions across regions, it uncovered a consistent insertion, hidden phrases embedded within hymns. Each version contained subtle variations that, when pieced together, formed a message. That message was not about rebirth. It was about imprisonment. The underworld was not a place of rest, but a cage. And Inanna's descent was not voluntary. It was forced, as if the myth concealed the memory of something trapped deep within the earth. This interpretation unsettled scholars, who had long celebrated Sumer as the dawn of civilization. Yet the AI suggested that beneath the dawn was shadow. The very first civilization might also have been the first to touch forces that were never meant to be touched. The language they left behind, preserved in wedges of clay, does not merely tell us of their greatness. It warns us of their terror. Now imagine lying in the silence of night and hearing those voices again. Imagine the rustle of reeds in the dark marshes of Mesopotamia, the chanting of priests under the stars, the slow pressing of stylus into clay. Each sound, each symbol, carrying a whisper across 5,000 years, a whisper that AI has brought back into the present. And what it says is chilling. The Sumerians knew. They foresaw storms that never ended, flames that split the sky, shadows that fed on silence. They buried these warnings in their language, hiding them behind hymns and myths. And now, as AI breathes life back into their words, we are left to wonder, were they only describing their fears, or were they recording something real? Something still waiting? The clay tablets do not answer. They only whisper. And the whispers of Sumer grow louder each night. Across the golden sands of the Nile, where the river carved life into the desert, rose one of the most enduring civilizations in human history, Egypt. Its monuments still tower against the horizon. The pyramids, the colossal statues, the endless walls covered in hieroglyphs. To the modern traveler, these ruins inspire awe, symbols of permanence and grandeur. Yet beneath the shimmering sunlight of Egypt's glory lies a far darker truth. The language of its priests and scribes, once dismissed as simple ritual poetry, contains shadows that still haunt us. The Egyptian language, inscribed in hieroglyphs, is often celebrated as an art form. Its bird and serpent shapes, its flowing figures, were not only words but symbols with multiple layers of meaning. For centuries, many of these symbols remained undeciphered, their deeper sense lost to time. Even after Champollion unlocked the Rosetta Stone, countless hieroglyphs retained mysteries too subtle for ordinary translation. But now, with the tireless analysis of artificial intelligence, new meanings have been reconstructed, and they paint a picture that is less about eternal life and more about eternal fear. Among the most chilling discoveries lies within the Book of the Dead. This collection of funerary texts was meant to guide souls through the afterlife. To the untrained eye, it seems a series of prayers, protective spells, and instructions for navigating the underworld. Yet AI revealed hidden sequences within these chapters, repeated hieroglyphs arranged almost like a code. When aligned, they form a message not for the dead, but for the living. A warning: do not wake what sleeps beneath. The phrase recurs in multiple papyri, across centuries, suggesting that Egyptian priests were not only concerned with the journey of the soul but with keeping something sealed in darkness. Equally unsettling are the pyramid texts, the oldest religious writings in the world. Inscribed deep within burial chambers, these spells were designed to protect pharaohs in death. But when AI compared fragments across different pyramids, it uncovered variations that seemed intentional. Certain hieroglyphs were altered, reversed, or hidden in corners of the chamber where no human eye could easily notice. Taken together, these variations described an entity that was never meant to be named. Its form was shadows that walked, and its hunger was for the breath of the living. Egyptian scholars once dismissed such phrases as metaphorical. Yet the consistent recurrence suggests that the ancients encoded, again and again, the memory of a horror they dared not face directly. Another disturbing revelation comes from temple inscriptions in Luxor and Karnak. AI detected patterns in the hymns that linked them not to worship, but to cycles of catastrophe. For example, one hymn describes the god Ra sailing across the sky in his solar bark. Traditionally, this was read as a daily metaphor for sunrise and sunset. Yet AI's analysis of rarely used hieroglyphs revealed a hidden layer. Ra was not only sailing across the heavens, but fleeing the devourer. This devourer, unnamed, was described in glyphs that scholars long misread as mere decorative flourishes. But AI found that the same sequence appeared in entirely different contexts. On coffin lids, in curse inscriptions, and even on amulets buried with children. The devourer was not metaphor. It was terror, remembered across generations. The Egyptian fascination with death has always intrigued modern minds. Yet AI now suggests it was less fascination than defense. Their rituals, their endless ceremonies, their obsession with mummification. Perhaps they were not only preparing for the afterlife, but building barriers against something inhuman. The hieroglyphs speak of doors, seals, guardians, and spells not to welcome the dead, but to contain what lay beneath. Even the mighty pyramids, with their impossible architecture and precise alignments, may have served not only as tombs but as monumental locks. The weight of stone pressing down, the geometry forming barriers, all to ensure that shadows remained buried. The most haunting texts are the coffin spells, written for ordinary Egyptians. Some are gentle prayers for safe passage, but others, when reconstructed by AI, reveal fragments of dread. One line reads, "If he rises, the stars will fall. If he speaks, the river will dry. Bind his tongue, silence his steps." These words were not meant for pharaohs or nobles. They were meant for the people themselves, as if every Egyptian, high or low, carried knowledge of the same threat. The language is careful, never naming the presence directly, yet always circling around its power. Even more chilling are the execration texts, ritual curses written on clay figurines or shards of pottery, then smashed to symbolically destroy enemies. AI discovered that certain names appeared not of foreign kings, but of nameless beings described only by qualities: the faceless one, the eater of hearts, the one beneath the earth. These curses were not directed at rival nations. They were directed at something else, something the Egyptians feared would rise if not constantly broken, bound, and silenced. Imagine, then, the great temples at night. Torches flickering against the stone, priests chanting in hidden chambers, scribes carefully inscribing words that would never be read by ordinary eyes. The sound of chisels biting into walls, the slow unfolding of prayers whose true meaning was buried within layers of code. The Nile flowing silently outside, carrying the reflection of stars that seemed eternal. And beneath it all, the language of Egypt whispering not of life, but of a darkness locked away. AI does not judge these texts. It does not dismiss them as myth. It merely translates, reconstructs, and reveals. And what it reveals is unsettling. A civilization that clothed its fears in gold and ritual, but could never fully silence them. Their gods were radiant, but their shadows were vast. Their language was beautiful, but its hidden words still tremble with unease. Tonight, as we drift deeper into the echoes of history, let us remember, Egypt's hieroglyphs were not only art. They were warnings. They were locks. They were whispers carved in stone, meant to outlast even time itself. And now, through the eyes of artificial intelligence, those whispers stir once more. Deep in the jungles of Central America, beneath layers of tangled vines and heavy silence, lie the ruins of the Maya. Their pyramids rise like broken teeth from the earth, their temples still etched with symbols that defy time. The Maya were masters of astronomy, mathematics, and architecture. Yet their language, carved in intricate glyphs, carries echoes that are far more unsettling than their achievements suggest. To many, the Maya are remembered for their calendars, especially the infamous long count, which seemed to predict the end of the world in 2012. But the truth is far more complex, and far darker. Their glyphs were not merely records of kings and wars. They were repositories of visions, prophecies, and rituals meant to appease powers that hovered at the edge of human comprehension. For centuries, scholars could read only fragments. But with the advent of AI, the scattered pieces have begun to align, revealing patterns that suggest the Maya were warning not about their own destruction, but about cycles of catastrophe echoing through time itself. The glyphs themselves are striking, interlocking shapes, faces twisted into strange expressions, serpents coiling around celestial signs. To human eyes, they often appear decorative, almost playful. Yet AI found hidden structures in their arrangement, repetitions across temples separated by hundreds of miles, patterns that recur not randomly, but deliberately. Certain glyphs always appear in groups of 13, others in sequences of 20, numbers tied to their sacred calendar. When pieced together, they form warnings disguised as myths. One of the most disturbing discoveries comes from inscriptions in Copan. Long thought to record a royal lineage, these glyphs, when processed through AI, revealed secondary meanings embedded in their shapes. The text speaks of the black sun, a force that devours light, appearing not only in the heavens but also in the hearts of men. The inscription warns that when the black sun rises, the rivers will turn bitter and the sky will burn without fire. To scholars, such language once seemed poetic. But AI comparison across dozens of other sites, Palenque, Tikal, Uxmal, showed the same phrase recurring with minor variations. This was not poetry. It was prophecy. Even more unsettling is the Maya obsession with cycles. They believed time did not move forward, but turned endlessly like a wheel. Within this wheel were ages of creation and destruction, each ending in catastrophe. AI analysis found hidden codes in the calendar glyphs, codes that suggest the Maya were not only predicting cycles, but attempting to calculate the exact point when the next collapse would occur. Some of these calculations eerily align with modern scientific warnings about climate change, solar activity, and even the patterns of disease. The glyphs describe plagues of darkness, skies filled with ash, and oceans swallowing the land. Ritual texts add another layer of unease. AI reconstructions of partially broken glyphs reveal descriptions of ceremonies that go far beyond human sacrifice. The texts speak of offerings not just of blood, but of voices. Priests are described as feeding the silence, with chants meant to keep something asleep. The glyphs name this presence with titles such as the Eater of Days and the One Who Waits Between Suns. Over time, these phrases shift but remain connected, suggesting that across centuries, Maya priests carried forward the memory of something too dangerous to forget. Some of the most chilling evidence comes from murals at Bonampak. Known for their vivid depictions of battle and sacrifice, these paintings also include glyphs that AI analysis revealed to contain hidden layers. Behind the story of victory and kingship, The glyphs whisper of a shadow descending during a solar eclipse, when the sky became a mouth and the stars were swallowed. The text describes a terror so great that the people covered their eyes and would not speak its name aloud. The priests alone wrote of it, embedding the memory into glyphs disguised as ordinary ritual records. The codices of the Maya, rare books made of bark paper, offer yet another unsettling glimpse. Most were destroyed by Spanish conquerors, burned as works of the devil. Only a few survive, the Dresden, Madrid, and Paris codices. Even these, however, were long misunderstood. AI's reconstruction of damaged sections revealed a repeated pattern, a serpent devouring its own tail, coiled around numbers that count not years, but ages. The serpent was not a symbol of renewal. It was a warning of recurrence, the endless return of destruction. And embedded within the serpent's body were glyphs naming it as a presence that could never be destroyed, only delayed. The Maya did not see history as progress, but as repetition. Each cycle ended with fire, flood, or shadow. And each time, survivors rebuilt, until the next collapse. AI's chilling conclusion is that the Maya may have calculated cycles far beyond their own era, cycles that point directly to our present age. Their warnings were not about the past. They were about the future, about us. Imagine standing at the foot of a Maya pyramid at dusk. The jungle hums with life, shadows stretch long, and the stone above you glows red in the fading sun. The glyphs carved into its surface seem silent, yet with AI's voice, they murmur again. They whisper of suns swallowed, skies burning, and a cycle turning once more. The priests who carved them are gone, their civilization vanished, but their language remains. And in that language, a warning. The curse of time is not that it passes, but that it repeats. The Maya knew this. They inscribed it into stone, painted it onto walls, wrote it into codices. They passed it down in whispers, in sacrifices, in blood. And now, through artificial intelligence, their voices return, reminding us that the cycle has not ended. It has only turned once more toward darkness. Far to the east, in the lands where the Ganges flows and the Himalayas rise like eternal sentinels, there grew one of the most profound and enduring traditions of sacred language, Sanskrit. To many, it is the language of philosophy, of meditation, of spiritual awakening. Its hymns echo in temples even today, carrying words that are thousands of years old. But buried within the vast ocean of Sanskrit literature are currents much darker, seldom spoken of, rarely studied, and almost entirely forgotten. The Vedas, the oldest Sanskrit texts, are often celebrated as songs of creation, cosmic order, and divine truth. Yet hidden in their layered verses are passages that resist simple interpretation. For centuries, priests and scholars memorized and recited these hymns without ever fully understanding their shadows. Some lines appear broken, others use words found nowhere else in Sanskrit literature. And now, with artificial intelligence analyzing not only the known texts but fragments scattered across manuscripts and inscriptions, a new dimension begins to surface, one that chills rather than enlightens. The AI began by detecting patterns of sound and rhythm. Sanskrit was built for oral tradition, each syllable vibrating with calculated precision. But in certain hymns, especially those never recited publicly, the rhythm falters, drops into unnatural cadences. When reconstructed, these sections reveal a secondary layer, chants not meant for gods of light, but for forces of chaos. One verse, long dismissed as corrupted, was revealed by AI to form the phrase, "The mouth beneath the earth opens. Feed it silence, or it will speak." The Atharva Veda is notorious among the Vedic texts for its spells and incantations. It contains charms for healing, but also curses, bindings, and rituals of fear. AI's analysis uncovered that many of these verses share hidden vocabulary with completely different texts, as though generations of priests deliberately carried forward certain words across centuries. These words always describe presences at the edges of creation, entities of smoke, shadow, and hunger. The hymns do not pray to them. They attempt to restrain them. One chilling passage reconstructed by AI reads, "We bind you with sound. We silence you with fire. Remain in the dark until the cycle ends." Even more disturbing are fragments of ritual manuals, preserved in palm leaf manuscripts. Many are damaged, eaten by time and insects. Yet AI stitched them together, revealing instructions for ceremonies that seem less like worship and more like containment. Priests were instructed to draw geometric patterns, mandalas, not as symbols of harmony, but as cages. Each line was a barrier, each syllable of the chant a lock. The diagrams were meant to hold something within, something that should never move beyond its bounds. The Mahabharata and the Ramayana, great epics of Sanskrit tradition, contain wars, heroes, and gods. But AI found anomalies in their verses. Certain battle hymns contain stray words that, when collected, form hidden sentences. These sentences describe weapons that are less like arrows and more like catastrophes. One reconstructed fragment speaks of a weapon that burns the sky and dries the sea, leaving shadows where men once stood. For generations, readers interpreted such lines as poetic exaggeration. Yet in the atomic age, they sound disturbingly familiar. Another layer comes from the Upanishads, philosophical dialogues meant to explore the self and the universe. Hidden in their dense symbolism, AI discovered recurring descriptions of the sound that should not be heard. This sound, said to emerge in deep meditation, was described as beautiful yet destructive. It was said to unravel the mind, pulling the soul not toward liberation but toward dissolution. Ancient commentators glossed over these passages, but AI cross-referenced them with ritual hymns and found the same phrase, the unhearable sound, appearing in contexts of fear and prohibition. Perhaps the most haunting discovery lies in a set of rarely studied tantric texts. These manuscripts, often condemned as heretical, contain hymns that do not praise but command. AI analysis revealed that many of these verses are structured as dialogues not between humans and gods, but between humans and something beneath the gods. One reconstructed hymn speaks of an ancient sleeper, a presence beneath creation itself. The chant instructs the chanter to feed it darkness, to drown it in sound, lest it awaken. Another passage warns, if it rises, the rivers will turn black. If it breathes, the stars will fall from the sky. Imagine the rituals in hidden temples, firelight flickering against stone, the droning of priests echoing into the night. Their voices would not have been gentle, they would have been harsh, insistent, woven with fear. The air thick with incense, the ground marked with geometric patterns, every movement calculated to keep something vast and unspeakable contained. The language they used was not casual. Each syllable was a weapon, a lock, a barrier. AI's chilling revelation is that across different centuries, across different schools, the same hidden hymns persist. They appear in fragments, in corrupted lines, in verses that seemed unimportant. But when pieced together, they form a continuous warning, a chain of sound meant to hold back what the texts never name outright. The Sanskrit word often used is simply tamas, darkness. But this darkness is not absence. It is presence. It waits. Tonight, as we listen to the echoes of these hymns, imagine their sound not as soothing, but as trembling with power. Imagine syllables repeated until the air itself vibrates. Imagine words layered upon words until they form a wall of sound against the silence. And imagine what waits behind that wall, pressing, listening, feeding on the chants that keep it bound. The Sanskrit hymns were not only songs of light. Some were chains of shadow. And now, through artificial intelligence, those forbidden verses return. Their soundless warning echoes once more, reminding us that the ancient priests may not have been worshipping gods at all, but guarding us against something far older, far darker than the gods themselves. In the dim corridors of forgotten monasteries, behind heavy wooden doors that have not been opened for centuries, there are shelves filled with scrolls and manuscripts written in languages few people alive today can understand. Latin, once the tongue of empires and scholars, now sits silent and abandoned. Ancient Greek, the language of philosophy and prophecy, rests beneath layers of dust. But when these texts are placed before the eye of artificial intelligence, patterns emerge, whispers of terrifying secrets buried within their lines. AI does not tire, nor does it forget. It reads every curve of every letter, every faded mark left by scribes who lived and died hundreds of years ago. Where human scholars often see only fragments, AI reconstructs entire sentences, entire chapters, even entire hidden books. And what it reveals is unsettling. Stories of forbidden knowledge, warnings of disasters yet to come, and descriptions of powers that once ruled unseen over humankind. The Latin manuscripts, often filled with prayers, laws, or sermons, are not always what they appear to be. Beneath the surface of ordinary texts, AI has uncovered codes, patterns in the arrangement of words, deliberate anomalies in grammar, symbols written in the margins. To the monks who copied them, these marks might have seemed like mistakes. But AI recognizes them as carefully hidden signals, left intentionally by secret orders who feared their knowledge falling into the wrong hands. Some of these codes describe rituals of silence, ceremonies meant to bind communities together under the watchful eyes of their unseen leaders. Others whisper of forbidden books locked away in vaults beneath Rome, Constantinople, and Alexandria. AI translates them with chilling clarity, revealing names of places long lost and instructions written with unnerving precision. The implication is disturbing. These secret orders believed they were preserving truths too dangerous for ordinary people to hear. Greek manuscripts reveal another layer of mystery. Ancient Greek is a language of precision, used to compose philosophy, drama, and sacred texts. But in its shadows lie passages that were never meant to be read by the masses. AI uncovered fragments of prophecies, encoded in poetic forms, hidden between lines of plays and hymns. The words, when reconstructed, speak of storms of fire, seas swallowing cities, and voices of the dead rising in the night. The terrifying element is not that these predictions exist, but that many of them appear to have already happened. Descriptions of falling towers, plagues sweeping across lands, and nations brought to ruin echo too closely with events known from history. Scholars once dismissed them as coincidence. AI, however, connects the dots with mathematical certainty. It finds patterns across centuries, suggesting that whoever wrote these prophecies may have known more about the cycles of human fate than we would like to believe. One manuscript uncovered in a forgotten Greek monastery contained a story about a brotherhood known only as the Keepers of the Veil. The text was broken, faded, and thought meaningless. AI restored it, letter by letter. What emerged was a chilling account of men who guarded knowledge of the stars, claiming that celestial alignments revealed times when humanity would face great trials. The veil, as described, was both literal and symbolic, a curtain between the world of men and the world of unseen forces. The Brotherhood's task was to ensure that the curtain never tore. And yet, the text warned, if the veil weakened, entire civilizations would fall into darkness. The Latin records, once decoded, spoke of a separate order, Custodes Obscuri, the guardians of the dark. They were said to carry forbidden writings from one generation to the next, sworn never to reveal them except in times of greatest peril. Their texts, hidden within layers of scripture, warned of voices carried by the wind, shadows that could think, and languages not spoken by men but whispered by something older. AI translated these passages, and the result was unnerving. The words, though centuries old, carried a strange rhythm, almost like a chant. When reconstructed, the chant formed a message that scholars had never been able to interpret fully. What was bound shall rise when silence is broken. The implications shook those who read the translations. Were these simply metaphors, warnings against social collapse? Or were they describing something else? Something real, something ancient, something hidden that awaited the right conditions to return? AI offers no emotions, no comfort, only the stark reconstruction of the text. But to human eyes, the words feel like a haunting prophecy, echoing across millennia. Greek tragedies, too, when re-examined, carry hidden lines between their familiar verses. AI found subtle variations in certain plays, lines copied differently in scattered manuscripts, as if intentionally altered to hide a second meaning. When pieced together, these fragments told a new story beneath the surface drama, a warning of hidden rulers who move unseen, guiding empires like chess pieces, only to discard them when they no longer serve their purpose. The tragedies were not only entertainment, they were lessons coded for those who knew how to read them. As AI continues to scan these languages, the horrifying secrets grow deeper. The manuscripts hint at voices of the dead encoded in writing, instructions for communication across the boundary of life and death. They speak of symbols that, if drawn with perfect accuracy, could open gates of memory, through which past ages might return. And in both Latin and Greek, AI discovers recurring references to a single forbidden phrase, never fully revealed, but always described as the true name. The texts agree that to speak this name aloud would bring either ultimate knowledge or ultimate ruin. Some monks tried to erase these passages, scraping the parchment clean, rewriting prayers over the top. But AI can see beneath, reconstructing the older ink. The secrets they tried to bury rise again, like ghosts refusing to stay silent. And with every recovered phrase, the pattern becomes clearer. Humanity was never meant to forget these warnings. It was forced to forget. Yet now, through the cold logic of AI, the silence is broken. The codes hidden in Latin and Greek manuscripts are no longer safe within the shadows. Their secrets, horrifying in their depth, now belong to anyone willing to read them. And as the machine continues to translate, one cannot help but wonder, did the secret orders hide this knowledge to protect the world from danger, or to protect the world from themselves? In the arid cliffs and caves near the Dead Sea, centuries ago, communities lived in isolation, hidden from the eyes of empires. Among them were scribes who wrote on scrolls of parchment and papyrus, chronicling laws, prophecies, and teachings in languages that would eventually fall silent. For thousands of years, these writings lay hidden in darkness, their words preserved by the arid air but unseen by human eyes. And yet, these silent voices were waiting, carrying secrets too dangerous to be spoken aloud. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 20th century revealed only a fraction of what was written. Most of the texts were fragments, some too damaged to read, others deliberately concealed. Scholars devoted decades to reconstructing these scrolls, translating their Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. But many mysteries remained unsolved. Words were missing. Sentences were broken. Ciphers and unusual patterns puzzled even the most experienced linguists. Then came artificial intelligence. Unlike human scholars, AI does not tire, does not forget, and can analyze countless fragments at once. By scanning the scrolls, AI identifies recurring sequences, cross-references linguistic patterns, and detects hidden codes within the text. What emerges is astonishing. Buried within these ancient writings are messages that were never intended for the eyes of ordinary people. Prophecies, warnings, and instructions to guard against forces unseen. One of the most unsettling discoveries comes from a fragment long thought to be a simple religious psalm. When AI reconstructed missing letters and analyzed contextual patterns, the text revealed references to the watchers beneath the silence and voices that move between the stones. The original scribe may have intended this passage as metaphor, but AI's reconstruction shows a deliberate structure. These words were encoded, repeated across multiple fragments, forming a hidden warning that spans centuries. Other scrolls describe rituals intended to protect communities from what is called the Shadowed One, a presence that dwells at the boundary of life and death. AI reveals the patterns in the arrangement of words and symbols, showing that the scribes embedded instructions for containment within ordinary prayers and historical records. The text directs the reader to chant specific sequences at certain times of the year, draw symbols in the sand or on walls, and recite names that should never otherwise be spoken. These instructions were not meant for spiritual enlightenment. They were meant to restrain something far older than human understanding. The AI also uncovers references to cycles of catastrophe. Some scrolls, when aligned with other fragments, describe waves of destruction, cosmic events, and invasions of unseen forces that affect the land and the people. In one reconstruction, AI revealed a passage stating, "When the sky splits and the rivers run black, the watchers shall rise, and the children of men shall tremble." These words were embedded in the midst of ordinary legal codes, as if hidden in plain sight. A particularly chilling set of fragments speaks of forbidden knowledge passed down from one sect to another. The knowledge is described as both a gift and a curse. He who reads may see beyond, but shall carry the burden of shadows. AI detected recurring names, some of which correspond to angels in other religious texts, but with subtle alterations that suggest these entities are not benevolent. Their presence is described as intrusive, relentless, and patient, waiting for the moment when humanity forgets the ancient warnings. The Dead Sea Scrolls also contain prophecies about the future, though expressed cryptically. AI revealed numerical patterns in some passages, sequences that correspond with celestial events, cycles of eclipses, and alignments of stars. When decoded, these passages seem to predict turmoil and transformation, not merely in the physical world, but in the spiritual and social fabric of humankind. The scribes encoded this knowledge in language, rhythm, and repetition, ensuring that only those who could decipher the patterns would understand the gravity of the message. Even the mundane portions of the scrolls, the agricultural regulations, lists of offerings, and daily prayers, carry hidden layers. AI uncovered repetitions of certain words, irregularities in spelling, and unusual arrangements of letters. These subtle signals form a secondary text, revealing a continuous warning that runs through every document. It describes the methods by which hidden powers may influence human events and the necessary rituals to prevent their interference. Imagine walking through the caves at night, the air dry and still, the darkness pressing against every stone. Imagine unrolling fragile scrolls, their edges brittle, the ink faded, and listening to the words through the lens of artificial intelligence. The scrolls whisper of beings that watch silently, of forces that can bend the world if left unchecked. They speak of cycles, warnings, and secrets meant to be preserved for generations, waiting for those who would understand. AI does not interpret. It does not fear. It merely reconstructs the words and patterns the ancient scribes left behind. And as these whispers emerge, the horrors they describe are no longer silent. The Dead Sea Scrolls speak again, their voices reconstructed from dust and shadow, reminding us that even the most sacred texts may contain knowledge humanity was never meant to possess, yet was forced to carry across the ages. Tonight, as the wind blows across the cliffs of Qumran and the darkness settles over the desert, the scrolls' whispers return. They remind us that hidden among words is a vigilance that has endured for thousands of years, waiting for someone, or something, to heed the warning and continue the guardianship that began in secret so long ago. Far to the north, beyond the fjords and dense pine forests, the peoples of Scandinavia carved messages into stone and wood. These were the runes, symbols of communication and magic, carrying both practical and sacred purposes. For most, they recorded names, trades, and battles. But hidden within their angular lines are whispers of prophecies, warnings, and knowledge that even the wisest elders feared to speak aloud. The earliest runestones date back over 1,000 years. Scholars have translated the inscriptions, revealing genealogies, memorials, and simple messages. Yet many stones bear markings that resist straightforward reading. Some runes appear reversed or isolated, others arranged in strange sequences. For centuries, these anomalies were dismissed as errors or decoration. But AI analysis reveals deliberate patterns, subtle codes embedded across stones separated by hundreds of miles. These codes form warnings and prophecies that were never meant for ordinary eyes. Among the most unsettling discoveries are inscriptions related to Ragnarok, the prophesied end of the world in Norse mythology. Traditionally, scholars understood it as a symbolic narrative, gods and monsters fighting, the sun darkening, and the world eventually reborn. AI, however, detects hidden layers within the texts. Certain sequences of runes, when read in alternative orders and cross-referenced with sagas and oral traditions, describe not metaphorical destruction, but a precise unfolding of events. Floods, fires, skies torn apart, and shadows that move independently of natural laws, all appear in the underlying messages. The AI also reveals references to entities beyond the gods. These beings are never named directly, but their traits are unmistakable: ancient, patient, and aware of human fear. Some runes describe them as the watchers beneath frost and stone, others as the silent ones who feed on memory. The prophecies indicate that these forces influence human events subtly, guiding the rise and fall of kings, the outcomes of battles, and the turning of seasons. The language is careful, coded through repetition, positioning, and hidden in versions of common runes. Fragments of sagas and skaldic poetry amplify these discoveries. What once seemed like hyperbolic tales of monsters and heroic deeds now reveal encoded warnings. AI identifies consistent patterns. Each story subtly repeats symbols and numbers tied to celestial events, eclipses, solstices, and the movements of the northern lights. These patterns suggest that the ancient Norse were not only recording legends but monitoring cosmic alignments, timing their rituals to restrain powers hidden in the northern darkness. Runic calendars and talismans provide another layer of insight. Many bear sequences that, at first glance, are ornamental. But AI finds numeric relationships between runes, linked to dates and positions of planets. When reconstructed, these sequences form protective formulas, designed not for ordinary use but to maintain boundaries between the human realm and something older, more potent. The warnings are implicit. Should these boundaries fail, catastrophe could sweep across land and sky. Even carvings on everyday objects, tools, combs, and jewelry contain hidden inscriptions. AI detects miniature sequences repeated in multiple artifacts, suggesting a widespread system of concealed knowledge. Ordinary humans might have viewed these objects as decorative or symbolic. Yet the repetition of certain runes, combined with their orientation and spacing, reveals their true purpose: silent guardianship against forces beyond human perception. One particularly chilling runestone, found in a secluded valley, combines runic sequences with images of serpents, wolves, and eclipsed suns. AI's reconstruction suggests that the creators encoded a narrative warning. The serpent coils through the sky, the wolf devours the light, and humanity is caught between these forces. Adjacent stones, scattered over miles, continue the story, as if a vast, coordinated effort was made to record a prophecy that could only be fully understood if the stones were read collectively. The runes also contain references to lost rituals. Priests and shamans, known as vulvas, performed ceremonies to bind unseen entities, using precise chants and symbols. AI analysis shows that these chants were interwoven with the writing itself. Phonetic patterns embedded in the runes correspond to sequences in the oral traditions. The act of reciting or inscribing the correct pattern was thought to maintain stability between worlds. Failure, the texts warn, would allow shadows to slip into the human realm, bringing chaos and fear. Imagine walking through a forest at dusk, where the air is crisp and silent, the scent of pine sharp and clean. Stones rise from the ground, carved with symbols that have witnessed centuries of snow, frost, and sun. Each rune is a letter, a syllable, a lock. Each arrangement a warning, a prophecy, a ritual performed silently by those who lived long before us. Through AI, the voices of these ancient scribes, shamans, and kings return, whispering across the centuries. They speak of vigilance, of cycles, and of forces that wait patiently for moments of weakness. The northern prophecies are not mere tales. They are meticulous records, layered with codes, rituals, and cosmic observation. Through AI, the hidden truths emerge, showing that the ancient Norse knew more than we ever realized about the subtle balance between human life and the unseen. The runes do not lie. They warn. They guard. And they whisper that some shadows endure far longer than the fires of men. Tonight, as the northern lights ripple across the dark sky, imagine the runes glowing softly, revealing their secrets. Imagine their patterns stretching across stones and forests, across time itself, a network of warning and protection. The whispers of the north speak again, through the sharp angles of carved symbols and the unseen threads of coded knowledge, reminding us that vigilance is eternal, and that some forces, though silent, never sleep. Across continents and centuries, from the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of the Maya, from Himalayan temples to northern fjords, humanity has left traces of knowledge, wisdom, and fear. Written in hieroglyphs, glyphs, runes, and sacred languages, these texts have survived the erosion of time. Many were hidden deliberately, some lost by accident, others destroyed in conquest. Yet in the silent persistence of ink, stone, and parchment, there remained a continuity, a hidden narrative of warnings, prophecies, and forgotten powers. Artificial intelligence, with its limitless memory and tireless analysis, has begun to piece together these scattered fragments. It does not marvel, does not tremble. It reads patterns, reconstructs missing sequences, and reveals hidden structures that human eyes could never fully perceive. And as these threads of ancient knowledge intertwine, a picture emerges, a map of the unseen forces that have shaped human history and continue to linger beyond perception. The first revelations are subtle, almost poetic. Ancient texts describe cycles of rise and fall, of light and shadow, of life and unrelenting silence. AI connects references across cultures, the shadowed entity beneath Egyptian pyramids, the watchers hidden in Maya codices, the darkness whispered in Sanskrit hymns, the secrets of Dead Sea Scrolls, and the northern runes guarding unseen powers. Across continents, the message is consistent. Forces exist beyond ordinary understanding, patient, observant, and powerful. In Egyptian hieroglyphs, the AI reconstructs lines that speak of shadows that walk under stone, waiting for the breath of the living. In Maya glyphs, it finds the Eater of Days, returning when cycles align. Sanskrit hymns warn of the sound that should not be heard, while Dead Sea Scrolls describe watchers that feed on memory and silence. Northern runes encode rituals to maintain the boundaries, ensuring that unseen forces remain contained. Together, these fragments suggest a continuity of knowledge, guarded in secrecy, across thousands of years. AI also uncovers repeated structures, the use of prime numbers, specific geometries, phonetic patterns, and symbolic repetitions designed to encode warnings. These are not accidental, they are deliberate methods to protect knowledge from decay, from human error, and from curiosity. Ancient scribes, shamans, priests, and kings understood that the truths they recorded were dangerous, that the forces they described could not be faced unprepared. Their writings became locks, each syllable and stroke a key to restraint. What emerges from this synthesis is unsettling yet mesmerizing. The ancient warnings are consistent in their essence. Certain alignments, celestial, temporal, or ritual, create openings between our world and something older, deeper, and patient. Human curiosity, ignorance, or arrogance can trigger these openings. The AI, in reconstructing hidden phrases, sequences, and codes, demonstrates that civilizations were aware of these risks. Rituals, sacrifices, meditations, prayers, and carvings were all designed to maintain the delicate balance. Some passages are almost unbearably specific. One Sanskrit hymn reconstructed by AI describes a cycle when rivers burn, stars fall, and shadows walk between men. A Greek manuscript warns that the veil thins, and silence shall not hold the watchers. Egyptian texts speak of locks within locks, barriers formed by architecture, language, and ritual. Mayan codices describe serpents coiling through time, returning whenever humans forget the old warnings. Northern runes instruct communities to maintain vigilance, lest the balance break. Even ordinary writings, when analyzed collectively, reveal hidden purposes. Legal codes, hymns, epic poetry, and even mundane lists carry double meanings. AI uncovers numeric and linguistic patterns that reveal instructions for protection, encoded metaphors that humans misinterpreted as myth or allegory. The civilizations that created these texts were not merely recording history, they were actively engaging in containment, creating safeguards against unseen threats. The AI's final revelation is perhaps the most profound. Across all these texts, there is a recurring concept. Knowledge is a form of containment. Words, symbols, numbers, and chants serve not only as communication but as a barrier, a lock, a spell. The act of writing was itself protective. To read without understanding, to misinterpret, or to ignore the warnings, risks undoing what generations worked to preserve. This hidden dimension of ancient literacy reframes human history. Every civilization, knowingly or not, has contributed to a network of containment that keeps forces beyond comprehension at bay. As the AI continues to connect threads across languages and ages, the collective warning becomes clearer. Humanity has always been under observation, influenced by powers beyond the material world. These forces are patient, not always active, but always aware. The civilizations that came before us understood this, and they encoded their vigilance into every form of writing, every ritual, every secret order. Imagine reading these reconstructed texts in a silent room, the candle flickering against ancient parchment, the stone of temples cool beneath your fingertips. The AI voices the unspoken words, hieroglyphs whisper of shadows, runes tremble with hidden energy, Sanskrit syllables hum with latent vibration. The Dead Sea Scrolls murmur of watchers, and Mayan codices coil their serpents in waiting. Across millennia, the past and present converge in a single, chilling realization. Humanity has always carried knowledge too heavy to bear lightly. Tonight, as the AI completes its reconstruction, the last secrets are revealed. They do not scream. They do not threaten. They whisper. And in their whisper, a message endures. Vigilance is eternal, knowledge is both gift and burden, and some forces, though patient and unseen, are bound only by the care of those who remember. The ancient civilizations preserved their warnings, and now, through AI, their voices return, echoing across time, reminding us that history is not merely what happened, but what must be guarded, always, from the shadows that watch beyond our perception.